שלום בארץ ושמחת עולם ליושביה. אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל בגואלו. אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. ונאמר אמן.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Happy 4th. I can't hide it anymore. I'm a history buff. I love studying the interaction between people, places, things, and time. As a teacher, I enjoy thinking about what the past teaches us about humanity and ourselves. I was fortunate to take some time off this past week, a staycation. It was certainly different, still very much enjoyable, because it included the most important aspects of what I like in a vacation. Spending time with my family, getting outdoors. I played 3 rounds of 9-hole golf, and usually learning some history. The lesson I would like to focus on today is that history, like humans, is morally complicated, and that the stories we tell and the sculptures and statues we erect should tell those complicated stories. It should be obvious that these lessons are connected to and influenced by current events that call for us to collectively look at our past and the monuments and myths that we have used to talk about and to tell ourselves and future generations about that past. During my break, I started listening to The Original Compromise by David Brian Robertson, a political science professor at the University of Missouri. If you've taken any history classes, as my just finished 7th grade daughters will tell you, The Original Compromise was the one that allowed slavery to continue at the Constitutional Convention. And in his book, The Original Compromise, Robertson takes us back to that hot and sultry city, Philadelphia, in the summer of 1787, the summer of the Constitutional Convention, the original room where it happens. Robertson asks us to interpret the 85-day-long convention and the Constitution it produced as a political events where politicians actually made some sausage. Sure, the men in that room were devoted religious practitioners with vast knowledge of both ancient and contemporary wisdom. We can learn all the John Locke that we want. But they also had their petty needs, their economic needs, their own ego, and the pride of their various states at hand. The participants know that some deep compromises need to be made, and they are still motivated to get as much as they can for their own causes. This wheeling and dealing is literally politics in action, whether you call it the Virginia Plan, the New Jersey Plan, the Connecticut Compromise. So yes, our founding and yes, sacred document, the Constitution, is a piece of political sausage. What came out is a fabulous document with great posterity. The Constitution unites diverse states and people with diverse and often competing needs into one country. The Constitution addresses many possible scenarios, including protecting, or the possibility of protecting at least, political minorities and giving those minorities some power over the majority. We can argue for a while if we want that it gave too much power to the minority. The Constitution puts in checks and balances, knowing that power and money can easily cause even well-meaning people, to trip up. But it's also a human document with deep flaws, including in its pages the discrimination of African Americans, Native Americans, and 50% of the population, women. This weekend's Disney streaming app, Disney Plus, released a stage recording of the hit musical Hamilton, written by and starred by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Miranda is 2 years younger than me and grew up in Inwood while I was growing up on the Upper West Side. Despite the proximity in age and location, we literally grew up in two different worlds, only 5 miles apart on the same island. I took a break from my audiobook to listen to Terry Gross interview Mr. Miranda. Miranda was asked to reflect as a Latin man on current events and the legacy of Alexander Hamilton and the other founding fathers. Miranda touched on 3 points that stand out to me. First, the American cultural world has a lot more to do to integrate non-whites. Miranda pointed out that he became a composer because he couldn't make it as a star, as a Hispanic. There are still too few theatrical works, he says, about the lives of non-whites. And worse yet, many directors and producers refuse to cast colorblind. Second, no matter how hard we try, we cannot run away from our past. Human psychology is built on the relationship between past, present, and future. We look at the world with a lens, and it is this past, present, and future that determines our lenses, very often unconsciously. Last, Miranda reflected on the slavery legacy of the founding fathers and the statues of them that we have erected. He noted that Hamilton and gang were not thinking about their statues as they lived their lives. As Professor Robertson writes, they were politicians through and through. Hamilton was too poor to own slaves and may not even have been a fan of slavery, but he was not going to let slavery get in the way of building a new country. What makes the musical Hamilton a genius work of art is that it celebrates what is great about America and about our founding fathers without lionizing them as perfect people. Without their vision of a republic by the people and for the people, with an openness to immigration, the country would not be what it is today, on the verge of becoming majority minority. Yet it was the compromise to allow slavery to continue that led to more centuries of pain for African Americans as we too slowly untangle a racist legacy that refuses to go away. Yesterday, NPR put out a video of Frederick Douglass's speech from July 4th, 1852, titled What to the Slave is July 4th. It was read by several of his descendants as they acknowledge and they count how many greats they have to get back to Douglass. Though this speech in 1852 was to a group of abolitionists, Douglass told this group of whites that they may be celebrating America's 76th birthday, but to Douglass and all the black slaves, this July 4th, that July 4th was not a day of celebration. What is very interesting and intriguing about the Torah, our mythic history book, is that it too presents our heroes and role models as flawed. The book of Numbers especially highlights many of the flaws of our great people. Aaron and Miriam mistreat their brother Moses. Moses strikes a rock in anger, and God's anger, God's self, flares. And Israel continually throws God in God's face, apparently, committing idolatry. And the Torah describes monuments that were kept to tell us about these flaws. This Thursday is the fast of Tammuz, when, according to the rabbis, Moses broke the first set of tablets at seeing the golden calf. The rabbis also imagine that the broken tablets were kept in the Holy Ark, alongside the second set, to remind us that renewal was possible, but also that even the Israelites who saw the splitting of the sea could go off astray. In this week's Torah portion, we read about the bronze serpent that Moses had to fashion to heal Israel because of God's wrath. That serpent was kept in the temple alongside the flowering staff that was there to remind us of Korach's rebellion. There is a place for artifacts and statues as long as they tell the whole complicated history. We are much better off doing so. And with the flaws present, we can celebrate the accomplishments that much more. Despite Israel's flaws, Bilam saw it to say, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. How good are your tents, Jacob, where you dwell, Israel. They say that this July 4th, 2020 is unlike any July 4th in history, with the coronavirus raging, deep rifts among fellow citizens, and a weakened federal government. Or is it so different? America has seen deep rifts before. There have been periods of weakness in the federal government. That was the purpose of the Constitutional Convention, to figure out how to create a federal government. And when these things happened, people, presidents, and other leaders have risen to the occasion to heal and to improve. Lincoln taught us charity for all and malice toward none as a way toward healing. FDR told us not to fear for the future when things looked grim. And Kennedy challenged us to be part of the change. And Martin Luther King Jr. heeded that call, even though he was not a president, by going into President Johnson's office, demanding that he pass civil rights legislation. Yes, 2020 is different, but we can learn from the past, the complicated past, and heed the call to celebrate America by uniting together to heal and to improve ourselves and our country. Yes, we can all be part of the change. We can expand the room where it happens to include all 320 million of us Americans, white, black, brown, Native, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, atheist, etc. Happy 4th, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom.